Hi, it's raining outside, as you can see behind me. But anyway, today I'm going to start producing what I'm going to call the HMRC Whistleblower videos, and this is going to be part one. I have produced a few other videos on various issues, but the HMRC Whistleblower part one, part two, part three, and so on, will be part of a blog where I'll tell you the story of what happened during the case when I blew the whistle on HMRC for manipulating statistics as it occurred. I am putting other blogs on, but that's asking HMRC managers and staff who are aware of what went on to report the criminal matters to the police. For example, the false allegations of sexual harassment that was made against me when I blew the whistle by people like Nick Ivel, Anthony Stansfield, Phil Davis, Scott Turner, Joe Lewis, Lisa Barton, and Debbie Urquhart Cannon. So anyway, the HMRC Whistleblower Part 1 will now commence. What happened was, in September 2003, I became aware that my line manager was manipulating statistics in order to make the department look as though it was performing better than it was. What they were doing was they were recording. We worked on an accuracy checking team, and we were recording the same case twice. The case would be recorded on the statistics under a name, somebody's name, a customer's name, and it would also be recorded under their national insurance number. So when the stats came up, it would show, it would come up under both the national insurance number and the name, and it would be recorded twice, even though it was the same case. So I sent an email to my line manager, Anthony Stansfield, accusing him of manipulating statistics in order to make the team look as though it was performing better than it wasn't. By an odd coincidence, the following Saturday, this took place on. Sent that email on the Friday. The next day, Saturday, the 4th of October 2003, I was in London outside Downing Street taking pictures of far-right extremists under the British Ulster Alliance who were holding a protest. I was there because I was doing a master's degree on the British National in social history, and my dissertation looked on the British National Party, a neo-Nazi group which has sought to remove non-whites from the civil service and country as a whole. During the course of those studies, my MA dissertation, which has been going on for the last year, I had received death threats, false sexual allegations against me. I'd been warned I would be shot by neo-Nazis who objected to my research. Like I said, they made false sexual allegations. They'd accused me of expressing support for suicide bombers. Anything to harass. Well, at that demonstration, I was actually stabbed outside Downing Street and went into hospital, St Thomas's Hospital. While I was off work for the next few weeks, after I'd been off work for the next few, Anthony Stansfield called me into the office on 18th of December 2003. Originally, he said to discuss how I was getting on. While I was there, he said to me, if I dropped my complaint, I would get a good appraisal. But if I didn't, complaints would be made. I didn't drop my complaint, and the next thing I know, it's January 2004, and I'm seeing a nurse called Mandy Brennan, and she's shown me a letter from Jackie Pye, who I'd never heard of before in my life, but turned out to be my new senior manager and Anthony Stansfield's manager, where she claimed I had extreme political views and staff were thinking of putting in complaints against me. Well, the term extreme political views have been used by neo-Nazis linked to the British National Party who have been accusing me of having extreme political views because I was a member of the Lib Dems and I objected to everything that the neo-Nazis stood for. I still do. I was then called to a meeting a few months later, and I was told I was to stay off work. They were putting me on disability adjustment leave, even though I was ready to come back to work. That was another way of suspending you without appearing to. I was told I couldn't come into work, so I was in fact suspended, though HMRC put it at disability adjustment leave. While at that meeting, my academic research on the British National Party was discussed, and Scott Turner then claimed I was some sort of extremist, exactly what the British National Party had been doing. That was complete nonsense. But I was told at that meeting that 5 complaints had been made against me, but I wasn't told what the complaints were. This was May 2004. All I was told was I was on disability adjustment leave and I was to remain off work until further notice, and I wasn't to come in. My union rep at the time was a lady called Sue Downey from the Public Commercial Service and Union, who was pretty ineffective, and I will discuss that later on because the behaviour of the PCS in all of this was just as appalling. So anyway, I was off work, and in July 2004, 8 months after the stabbing, I was sent a complaint by somebody from the HMRC complaints team, external complaints team, which means outside the tax credit office but within HMRC. The complaints were quite staggering. They accused me of sexual harassment, of expressing support for suicide bombers, of bullying, of playing the race card, and there was also a complaint about my academic studies on the BNP. But the most amazing thing about that was the complaint was also that I was an extremist for heckling the BNP. In other words, those complaints by those 5 members of staff, Anthony Stansfield, Phil Davis, Tim Fisher, Nick Ivel, and Tony Smith, Phil Davis, Nick Ivel, Anthony Stansfield, and Tim Fisher, those are the 5 members of staff, were exactly the same complaints that had been made by neo-Nazis for the last year, and which are on the internet if you care to look, and which I'd reported to the police. It's also worth bearing at this time that a few months earlier there'd been a programme called The Secret Policeman, where a couple of white officers had taken offence to an Asian member of staff and had plotted to get rid of him. It's called The Secret Policeman, and it was only uncovered because one of their number was a BBC reporter called Mark Daly, who had filmed them plotting to put in complaints against him because they wanted him sacked on the express report for suicide. The express report for the BNP, some of them did. Look at The Secret Policeman, it's quite interesting. Well, what was happening there is exactly what was happening at HMRC to me, and the complaints that Stanfield and Co put in were exactly the same complaints that the neo-Nazis have been putting in because of my academic research on the BNP. So anyway, I was told to stay off work, and I would shortly be charged with all of the offences, including that I was an extremist for heckling the British National Party, a neo-Nazi party which has sought to remove all non-whites and Jews from British shores. In my next video clip, the HMRC Whistleblower Part 2, I'll tell you what happened after that.